Hey everyone, so today I want to pick out a story from this very awesome investing book. It's titled A Random Walk Down Wall Street. It's very often mentioned, and I think it's a great book so far, and it's great on investment and advice. And one thing that's a common theme in a lot of very good investing books is the stupidity and madness and exuberance and ridiculousness of crowds. And it's funny because one thing that's constantly mentioned throughout this book is the tulip bulb story. What this is this story that occurred many hundreds of years ago, and basically it's about this tulip bulb fanaticism. There were these tulip bulbs, which are these special type of flowers, and basically about a few hundred years ago, when this happened uh, in a European country, they found the specific variant of this flower exceptionally amazing. So what happened was it started becoming rarer and rarer because it took a long time to grow, and ultimately prices just went through the roof, and the optimism and speculation and the rarity of the plant, it just fueled it more and more until the prices were so ridiculous. And uh, there's actually this one story from one book where a guy literally almost strangled his friend when his friend accidentally came in to visit and took some of the petals off of his plants, thinking that they were seasoning for his food, when in reality they were this ridiculously expensive flour. And as bubbles do, it eventually bursted, and people got their senses back and realized it was just a flower, and it wasn't worth all these uh, gold coins and all this ridiculous amount of money they were putting into it. And everything went back to normal. So that's one story, but the story I want to talk about is a similar story um, about the licorice plant. And this occurred in China in the 1980s, which was only a few decades ago, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. Because there's one thing when you tell a story that's like far off in the past. It's easy to think, oh, these people were stupid back then, or not as developed. But what these books seem to instill is that humans are humans. They're born, and generally they don't change. Some can educate themselves, but you can't prepare them for everything, and you can only educate so much in so a certain amount of time. And one huge thing that's not going to change is how humans act. Like technology will change every year, but the way humans act emotionally is hardwired into us, and that's something that's not logically thought through. It's a natural reaction, and we had to react that quickly because of the predators in our past, where we didn't have more time to think through, oh, is this a predator, or and so forth. And emotions work like that uh, to get us out of dangerous situations. And how genetics and uh, I guess natural selection works, we don't change or that quickly. And so, long story short, 1,000 years in the future, maybe even 10,000 years in the future, humans are going to be humans. They're going to act the same way, and they're going to do stupid things due to the massive delusion of crowds. Anyhow, let's get started with the story, which happened only a few decades ago, which really amazes me. It's very similar to the tulip bulb phenomenon, and it occurred in China in the time when the government was restructuring, um, and a plant called the Lycoris radiata from Africa was brought into the city of northern China. And so this was brought in the 1930s, but by the mid 1980s, um, the royal family had adopted the flower, and it was a sign of distinction and taste. And later, the city of Changchun made it the city flower. And by the 1980s, half the families of the city started growing this plant. So, as news of this flower spread to other parts of China, demand for the plant increased substantially. And because it took several years to grow this plant, the supply could not keep up with the increasing demand. And so, as prices began to rise, uh, speculators started coming in, buying up this stuff, trying to cash in on it to make a lot of money in the future. And what happened was exceptional optimism. And basically, what this is this ridiculous amount of uh, optimism that begets more optimism, and then exuberance begets more exuberance, and that's often how it works. And nowadays, it's even worse because a lot of factors can work to push it up even further that weren't there, namely technology. In certain ways, technology can like really push that up. And so, long story short, everyone was buying these freaking plants, and here's where it gets crazy. It started at a price of about $30 USD or 100 yen, and by the mid 1980s, price for a single flower had increased 2,000-fold to about 60,000 USD or 200,000 yuan, which, just to keep things in perspective, was equal to how much the college graduate in China at the time would make after working 300 years after graduating, which is insane because at that time, college graduates was not a common thing. It's a rarity. And it still is somewhat of a rarity. It's tough to get into college and then graduate. And so from there, the bubble burst and prices plunged 99%. And that was just ridiculous because this happened a couple decades ago. And so I think it's very interesting. I'm sure stuff like this will happen again. It probably won't be in flowers, but it's just ridiculous how this sort of stuff happens. And I do think that crowds behave like this just because of how humans are. And yeah, it's an interesting story for the day. Hope it was entertaining. Maybe it taught you something. If not, it was entertaining. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.